Tell me about your vision.
So, my vision is that everyone on the planet would be living their legacy every moment of every day, choice by choice.
Mm,
And, it's something that most people, when we think about legacy, we tend to think about like something we're going to leave behind after we're gone. And it's usually like, finances, property, that kind of thing. And I believe the reality is we are living our legacy, with every choice that we make, every action that we take. And that can be a little jarring,
mhm,
especially, and I've been there, we can be on autopilot, like going 100 miles an hour, only to wake up one day going, I think I'm going the wrong direction,
mm,
or I'm not sure if this is the right direction. And so, I believe, especially now, there's so much change, so much uncertainty going on. And, you know, we need to become more conscious of, in the middle of all that, what is it that we really want? Really, not by default, but by design. What is it that we want our life to look like? How do we want to be able to impact the people on our path?
mm,
And that's just not something that most of us make the time to ponder. And for me, it took COVID to wake me up. It was a serious wake up call. And I realized, when everything came to a halt
mm,
and I had to like look life straight on and say, is this what I've been doing? Even though what I was doing was really successful and meaningful, it had kind of lost its spark for me.
mhm,
And I realized I was completely burned out and I needed to rethink. I wanted to rethink my life. Now, rethinking your life in the middle of a pandemic, in terms of being able to make a significant shift in what I was doing, did not make a lot of sense financially. It's like, oh my gosh, how am I going to completely rethink my life? And how can I afford to do that in Los Angeles in the middle of the pandemic? And, I have done the seemingly impossible over and over throughout my life.
mm,
And in that moment, I needed to say, okay, what's worked for me before? And it's two what I consider kind of magical questions, which is, what if what I really want is possible? And what am I not seeing yet?
mm,
And that yet is really critical because it's the thing that opens up that door of possibility that there is something, there is a way to do it. I'm just not seeing it yet. And by asking, what if it is possible? I get out of that negative, all the what ifs, as in, what if it won't work, and to shift my mindset into one of, hmm, what if it is possible?
mhm,
And it really is and has been for me magical. Meaning, in this case, the minute I asked those two questions, the next day I came across an article about a woman who had retired in Mexico on her fixed income. I'm like, say what? No way could
mhm,
I do what I want to do on my fixed income and move to Mexico in the middle of a pandemic. That's crazy. And of course, all of
yeah,
my friends fueled that. That's crazy. What are you thinking? You're either on something or onto something. Which is it? But the minute I saw that article, I began to second guess my doubts. And I began to think, okay, well, what would that look like? Or what would I want it to look like? And I created a list with my husband. We sat down and said, what would we want this next life to look like? Detailed, not just little whatevers, but like exactly what do we want it to look like? And there were 2 things at the top of the list: affordable
Mhm.
and climate, as in a moderate climate. If we were gonna move, because we were gonna have to move if I wanted to do this.
Mhm.
And when the climate issue came up, I looked at what are the top 3 places in the world that have a moderate climate, and Lake Chapala, Mexico popped up onto my radar screen.
Mm.
And, I thought, well, okay. And so we started doing research. And lo and behold, it ticked off every single box on our list, including our want, we had the have to haves, nice to have, would be amazing to have. And the 2 things on the amazing side were mountains and water. And Lake Chapala is the largest freshwater lake in Mexico.
Mm.
And we literally, the home that we're in now, we have a view of the lake and we're up against the mountains. And across the lake, there's another set of mountains, you know. So
That's awesome.
you know, it was amazing. Again, by opening up our mindset and, challenging the assumptions that we had, and there were
Mhm.
many about Mexico. And of course,
Yes.
none of those have turned out to be true. And, we love the people, we love the culture, we love the environment. And it gave me time to sit back and reflect on my life and what was it that contributed to me doing those seemingly impossible things, and to finally write my book to share with other people, how I went from doubt to do over and over again, how I actually navigated the possibilities that, I first, that I saw. Um, and, it's given me time to then leverage that to be able to speak like I am today, and to share my vision with other people, because I really do believe it would be life changing, not only for the individual, but for everybody on their path, for the world. If we
Mhm.
all were willing to own up to what is it that we really want and why is it so important and what are we willing to do to make that happen.
Thank you for sharing that with us, Kat. Um, I there's so much you shared, and there's so many questions I have regarding that. First thing is, to me, legacy is something you build towards, and to you, legacy is something you live. To me, legacy is something you leave behind for people. To me, that is impact you've had in the world, the life maybe you've changed, and maybe the people you've inspired.
Yep.
And you say that it's something I'm living right now. There's a very few people I know who are living their legacy. So, what is the legacy you're living right now, or is this something that you've already shared to me with me right now? That you moving to Mexico, having those experiences, and living where you wanted to live with the people you wanted to live, and having the experience you wanted to have. What is your legacy?
So my legacy, well, ultimately, I would say I want to have a legacy of love, but
Mm.
that's kind of like a big thing. But what that looks like for me every day is what am I doing to help other people see their full potential
Mm.
and not be limited by the way they've labeled themselves, the way other people have labeled them, um, all the shoulds and have tos, and uh, I'm I'm in the process of I'm going to be doing a TED talk in March, and my my working title is Labels, Lies, and Your Legacy.
Mm-hmm.
Because, you know, in order to be living our legacy, it means we need to be letting go of all those things that are limiting us from what we really want. It
Awesome. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Um, would you say what are some of the stories that you have pertains to your why or what you do? I would love to hear some of those stories. I think that would be
Sure.
something that would put some more insights on where you're going with this and why.
Yeah. So I was really blessed at a very early age
Mhm.
to be exposed to something that completely changed my life, which was, you know, at the age of 14, I saw an Up With People performance. And you might say, "What the heck is that?" Because 'Cause you're probably too young to know what
Yeah.
that is. But Up With People, had a 2-hour, very inspirational live performance
Mhm.
with young people, then college age, and they toured for a year,
Mhm.
staying in host families wherever they went. And the whole purpose was to prepare them to be lifelong change makers, to see their potential and to give them the courage and the confidence to pursue their vision.
Mhm.
And when I saw that at 14, it was like my dream to be able to travel with them. But I was 14 and these were college kids, and but believe it or not, I declared this is my dream. Someday I'm gonna do it. And 2 years later, when I was 16, they started a high school cast. And I'm like, "Here we go. I'm gonna live my dream." And in order to do that, I had to get a sponsor.
Mm.
And again, probably might be too young to appreciate the full impact of this, but I picked up the phone and I called NBC Studios and I asked to talk to Bob, as in Bob Hope, who
Wow.
was one of the biggest entertainers in the world at that time.
Mhm.
And believe it or not, he was there. They
Mhm.
put him on the phone. I
Mhm.
shared my opportunity,
Mhm.
and he became my sponsor, paid
Wow.
for my complete year on the road.
That's awesome.
And that was the beginning of me believing that anything is possible when we make a decision and,
Yeah.
about what we want, we declare what we want, we
Mhm.
share it expecting that we're gonna get the support,
Mhm.
and and it really it created a whole way of being for me that I then lived out in many other situations.
Mhm.
And, they really helped me see my potential during that year. It was an
Mhm.
incredible experience. So, fast forward many years later, I went to work at a residential treatment facility for teenage girls that were labeled at risk. And I was really, taken with their vision of giving these girls a, quote, "second chance,"
Yes.
and that I could be part of that. But I realized very quickly this wasn't a second chance.
Mhm.
How can you have a second chance if the only thing you've ever known is one thing? So I had this idea, many people thought was crazy, but I had this idea that if we could get these girls out in the community
Mhm.
doing meaningful work, that it would transform their image of themselves, other people's images of them, labels,
Mhm.
and show them that they have the potential to make a difference in the world.
Mhm.
I shared my passion with the nonprofit leaders. 20 of them said yes,
That's
and we
awesome.
started a summer program,
Mhm.
volunteer program that became transformational. I
Mhm.
mean, these girls, they were kind of downcast before this, and all of a sudden they had a spark in their eyes. And instead of running away, they stayed. They showed up day after day, whether it was walking Johnny at the equestrian therapy, or being with Mrs. Johnson at the senior center, or working at the food bank. All of a sudden, these girls realized they matter to someone, and someone mattered to them.
Mhm.
And they could have a positive impact in their life. And it really was transformational. So this for me was is a great example of when we have a vision for something and we're willing to kind of buck the system, you know,
Yes.
and share our vision, that we can attract the support that we need and we can make a difference. So I would say to your listeners, like, what are you passionate about? And what could you do if you believed that was possible? You asked for what you needed and you took that first step, which is always the hardest,
It
the
is,
first step.
yes.
Thank you for being here today. I'm really happy that you tuned in to Vision Pros Live. I'm looking forward to seeing your reactions as these episodes continue to move forward. This is going to get more and more fun. We'll have more and more engagement as well. We'll invite people to participate in the show. And thank you for giving us your time and attention. Have an excellent time building out your vision and becoming a Vision Pro yourself.